Hello and welcome back to Odds Law with Fitzdares, the show where the data and stats get cross-examined like a hostile witness to reveal the stories behind the sport. I am joined as usual by Ian McIntosh.
Hello.
But you may have noticed we've strengthened the starting 11. We brought in a new signing to the sofa, no transfer fee disclosed, but the data guys are very excited. Welcome to the show, Tom Williams.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for coming by. And on today's episode, we're going to plunge back into the Champions League, a tournament that often seems to make a mockery of bold predictions, but we are still going to make some bold predictions. So let's get into it. Okay, normally at this stage, I'd be asking if you were ready to play Two Truths and a Lie. Ian, how did
So soon? Wow. No preamble. Straight in.
Throw in the big features up front.
But this week I'm going to offer you a choice, and I have an inkling of what I think you'll go for. But the choice is that we could play a surprise game instead. Would you like the surprise?
I mean, when have surprises ever been unwelcome?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
No-brainer.
In that case, I'm going to have to just remove my cushion.
Okay.
And take something
Oh,
out from behind me.
what?
And for the benefit of
Absolute ambush here.
For the benefit of the audio listeners, Ian, what am I holding?
You are holding what looks like the European Cup final shirt of Liverpool from 2005. I say that because it's got the final Istanbul 2005 written across the centre of the liver bird.
Yes. Well, I thought, given that we're doing an episode, all about the Champions League, that Ian and I have been talking for weeks about incorporating, memories, and, learning about core football moments together. And unfortunately, I was sent to bed at halftime in Istanbul. So I thought, since we've got an expert here and we've got Ian here who loves to reminisce, I was going to ask you guys about Istanbul, but because of course we're a data show, we're going to start with some stats. And then I'm going to pick your brains for your memories. So obviously it was a miracle. Miracles do happen in football, but I think when you look at the raw stats, it just makes it all the more unbelievable, really. So 8 of Milan's starting 11 had played in and won a Champions League final before 2005, while not one of Liverpool's had done so. Obviously, the most notable of those was the captain, Paolo Maldini, who was making his 7th and penultimate appearance in the Champions League final. Of course, would go on to win on his 8th in 2007. And to fall behind to that kind of experience, just 50 seconds in, the fastest Champions League final goal ever scored. Milan kept loads of clean sheets, 9 clean sheets in 12 Champions League matches in 2004-05, the most of any side in the competition. And on top of that, a very low scoring Liverpool side. So how did it happen?
Oh, is this Yeah. The magic of football. It's the only explanation. I often feel very sad for Hernan Crespo, who scored one of the greatest Champions League goals of all time to put Milan 3-0 up from an absolutely incredible Kaká pass that Jamie Carragher stretched every sinew to try and cut out, but couldn't. Dinks it over Jerzy Dudek. But who remembers that goal now? Every time you think about Istanbul, you just think about the comeback. And, rightly so.
And who also remembers that Rafa Benitez got the team completely wrong? Completely wrong.
I won't hear a bad word said against that man.
I would put your fingers in your ears because it's going to be a long section.
Needs to be said.
So I was out that night with a load of friends who were all Liverpool fans, and I was the one that you don't want on a night like that because I'm going, lads, you haven't got a chance. This lot are twice the team of you. You're going to get absolutely battered. It's just amazing that you've got this far. So imagine me at half-time, and Lola, how much I like to say I told you so.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm like physically clenching my jaw shut so the words don't come out and I don't get beaten to within an inch of my life. Liverpool are terrible in the first half because for some reason he's gone out on a 4-4-1-1 with Harry Kewell behind Milan Baros and no defensive midfielder against Kaká, who is at that point the best attacking midfielder in Europe by a million miles. It's only because of the injury to Steve Finnan that he mixes everything up. He brings Didi Hamann on at the base of midfield, and suddenly AC Milan are just running into a chain-smoking German red wall that they cannot get past. Then you have that blistering, was it 12 minutes? Yeah. 13 minutes. And then, and I know this because I've rewatched the game a few years later, nothing happens. Once it goes 3-3, nothing happens until the penalties.
That's not quite true. There were 20 shots in the rest of the game, 14 of which were AC Milan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there is the moment where Carragher gets cramp in his left thigh, then cramp in his right thigh, and you can see quite clearly that he cannot move anymore, and he's just kind of like a marionette come to life. Dudek at one point fumbles a really easy cross and drops it on the floor and has to scramble to get it back, and he almost doesn't get it back, and Carragher goes mental at him, screaming abuse in his face about holding it together. There's so many things that get forgotten, I think largely because everyone was really drunk.
So I was at university and my two best mates were both Liverpool fans, and I remember in the fortnight building up to the game, I would send them a picture of a different Milan player. Would it have been a text message in those days? Something like 2005.
An email?
I don't think it would have been an email. It would have been an early Facebook banter, but it was like, look, guys, Cafu, Stan, Nesta, Maldini, Catusapilla, blah, 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 blah. This lot are going to absolutely destroy you. And then the first half went the way it went, and I was watching the game with a bunch of non-Liverpool fans. The two Liverpool members of our friendship group were watching it in a pub just down the road, and we absolutely pelted them with mocking text messages. So certain were we that, well, it's 3-0 at half time, they could end up conceding 6 or 7. And then obviously, Liverpool come back, they win. And I remember it was in the middle of exam season, so university was very quiet, and I heard the two of them walking back through the streets of the town in the middle of the night from about a mile away because they were singing so noisily. And it's about as happy as I think I've seen either of them. And I've been to both of their weddings, and I've seen them introducing their firstborn children. That was the absolute summit.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, yeah, we love data on this show, so I think we'll just round off that discussion by saying Liverpool had a 0.55% chance of winning the game.
That high. That high.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a chance?
Spare a thought, by the way, for the Everton fan who threw a massive bet down on AC Milan to win at half-time. In one of those, well, it's a free, whatever it was, it's a free 50 quid and lost about $5,000.
He needs to be told about the concept of an emotional hedge.
There's a lesson.
There really is.
There's a lesson for us all.
Right, so from the miraculous, we're now going to talk about, something that is, potentially quite likely to happen, and that is the favourite winning the Champions League. So I'm just going to put forward the many statistical points that suggest that Arsenal, have a good chance of winning this competition. They're 7-2 as things stand, which is a 22% probability. And an unerring 8 wins out of 8 games in the league phase, most goals scored, fewest goals conceded. And I think the key thing, if you're an Arsenal fan, aside from the kind of squad depth, which we'll come to, is the comprehensive beating of Bayern Munich at the Emirates in November. So it was 3-1 that day with an XG differential of 2.42, which is comprehensive, really, as victories can be. And of course, if they're on their best winning streak in their European history, surpassing 6 match winning runs in the 2005-06 Champions League, which of course they got to the final that year, and in the 2021 Europa League group stages where they also got to the final. So the omens are looking good for Arsenal. Why won't they win the Champions League, Tom?
Well, look at last season. The two best teams in the league phase last season were Liverpool and Barcelona, and an awful lot of people assumed that would end up being, the final, or that those were the two teams to beat. And as we know, neither team even made it to the final. So
PSG nearly didn't make it to the playoffs.
Very, very close to, being knocked out in the league phase. And if there's one thing that football has taught us over the years, it's not to hold too much store by what a team does in the early stages of a competition. I often think back to the group phase of the 2006 World Cup.
Argentina.
I watched Argentina eviscerate Serbia and Montenegro 6-0 in the group phase in a pub just off Trafalgar Square in central London with a bunch of random office workers on their lunch breaks. And when they scored that absurd goal, Esteban Cambiaso finishing off a 79 pass move, or whatever it was, everyone spontaneously applauded. I've never been so certain in my life that I'd seen, greatness before me. and they went out in the quarterfinals on penalties to Germany. And it happens over and over and over again. So, I mean, it's not really a statistically based opinion, but it's very rare for a team to dominate a tournament from start to finish. And that leads me to think that Arsenal will not be able to sustain this level of excellence. And that's before we get into the fact that the priority for everyone at Arsenal this season is winning the Premier League at long last.
Yeah. Completely agree. I don't think the group stage is fit for purpose for anything other than anything other than maximizing TV revenues. Lola's heard me rant about this a lot, but there's no way you can look at that and go, "Oh, they won the group stage. They'll go all the way." Because I don't know, who did they play? What did it matter? None of it matters. You need 10 points, maybe 11 points to get through. So I wouldn't read too much into that. And I think, yeah, Arsenal, we've seen Arsenal are a bit skittish under moments of pressure. They will be at their most skittish as we hit the quarterfinal, semi-final stages. They've also been, like most teams, hit really hard with injuries. I can see them going out quite early, and I can see a lot of people at Arsenal being like, phew, thank God for that. Now we can focus on this.
I think, it's I'm not just going to try and bring it back to Istanbul for the whole episode, by the way. But when you look at the statistics for that night and you think about what happened, it does show that there is a massive amount of randomness in football. So, there's lots of cogent reasons why Arsenal wouldn't win the competition, as you say, kind of burning out too early, priorities elsewhere. But this is quite a profound question. But how much does pedigree matter in this competition? And by pedigree, I mean clubs like Real Madrid and Liverpool that have a kind of deep understanding and seemingly quite productive relationship with the chaos and randomness of this competition. How much does that matter as you approach the latter stages of the Champions League?
I feel like it shouldn't matter very much because it's impossible to measure and it's impossible to quantify. But it feels like it does matter because Real Madrid, almost regardless of which players are wearing the shirt, so frequently manage to achieve things in the Champions League, and particularly at times when no one is expecting them to. I mean, you'd think we'd have all learned our lesson by now because they do it with such frequency. But there is something about, and I don't think it's anything sort of mystical or anything like that, but there is something about playing for Real Madrid. I think it probably has an impact on the way that, the stadium reacts during matches. Like, at the Bernabeu, perhaps also at Anfield, there's a feeling, well, we've been here before. We know that the team can be in a difficult position, but they've shown that they can get out of this. And so you don't get the kind of nervousness in the stands that can filter down onto the pitch. So I think that's a factor. But it is a peculiar one because it shouldn't matter. But you watch enough football and it's hard to avoid a feeling that some clubs do just seem to cope better with the slings and arrows of whatever the Champions League throws up. And I guess on the flip side, you get clubs who've historically struggled, and PSG, with a perfect example, prior to last season, they seemed to have everything you needed to win the Champions League, and they just couldn't get over that last hurdle.
Everything apart from a team.
This is true, but it began to feel cultural. There was something about the nature of the meltdowns, like each more absurd than the last one. And players are aware of that. Players know the pedigree of the clubs they join. And you wonder whether when you join a club with a Champions League pedigree, even if you've never won it before yourself, whether that somehow kind of seeps into you and seeps into all your teammates.
Iain, which team left in the competition? And we're actually not going to show the viewers because I think my scrawlings are just too rudimentary.
We definitely should. The work that's gone into it.
Here's something I made earlier.
Why Liverpool already in the final? I don't get it.
They appear to have won 4-0. So who have Arsenal got?
Okay, so Arsenal could face Olympiacos, Leverkusen, Dortmund or Atalanta, but they face the lowest ranked team that goes through in those ties. So Dortmund, after last night's first leg, hold a 2-0 advantage over Atalanta, and Olympiacos and Leverkusen play tonight. So I think you could probably say the most likely lowest ranked team to come through there would be Leverkusen. Look like Arsenal's most likely last 16 opponent.
Yeah. That would appear to make sense.
Yeah, and they've had a very, very odd season, sacking their manager after 2 games. They've just about cobbled together a Champions League qualifying side. They should be anyway. I think everyone's a bit surprised to see Hoffenheim roaring up the table, unsettling the balance a bit.
The object of bringing out the diagram was to ask you both, in a word, who is the most dangerous team to Arsenal left in the competition?
I think Liverpool.
Because they're on the same side of the draw.
That could change though, because they redraw.
That is true.
Yeah. So for now, for the benefit of the audio listeners, Liverpool find themselves on the silver path, and there is the blue path, but that will be redrawn after the last 16.
I see. Well, a team like Liverpool then, with punching ability, but probably very little to concern themselves with in the final stages of their domestic season. There probably will be some sort of scramble for 4th or 5th, but I'd expect them to be pretty much in it. Liverpool will be seeing this as, the salvaging their season, a la 1981, Bob Paisley finishing 5th and winning the European Cup. A la 2005, Rafa Benitez finishing 5th and winning the European Cup. I think if you get a Liverpool team that can happily rest players ahead of European games and they come up against an Arsenal team that absolutely cannot, that could be quite interesting.
Tom?
I think the good teams, the other leading contenders, Bayern Munich, PSG, all the other English clubs, because you never want to play a domestic rival in continental competition, and there's always just unhelpful context to that, and it's always the worst way to go out of the tournament, and inevitably has a kind of an emotional impact on the tie. I don't think Arsenal should fear anyone. They've shown in the league phase that they're capable of beating everyone, and I agree, Lola. I think the fact that they beat Bayern so convincingly augurs very well, because Bayern beat PSG pretty convincingly at the Parc des Princes. And I remember watching that and thinking Bayern are clearly a cut above everyone. And I'm not sure that they're necessarily a cut above Arsenal. So, yeah.
I think you also look at teams like Real Madrid, who I watched last night, because it's anyone with a puncher's chance now. As much as I loathe the group stage, by the time it gets to this bit, it's actually really, really good. Real Madrid against Benfica last night, for the first 15, 20, maybe even 25 minutes, Benfica are on top of them. Real Madrid are not a good team. They play 4-4-2. And if you're wondering what that gap is, it's Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. not tackling back. They are almost 2 teams in one. So they're never, ever going to be more than the sum of their parts. But while I was thinking all of this, Vinicius Jr. scored a wonder goal out of nowhere, which is one thing that isn't being talked about that much today. Just to prove that a team like that, they almost don't have to be a great team unit. They can still just kill you in the final third.
But, teams can grow through the competition. It's worth remembering last season, Arsenal comprehensively beat PSG in the league phase, and PSG obviously grew into the tournament. Okay, we're going to go to a break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about PSG. Welcome back. Okay, Tom, we brought you here for many reasons, but the principal reason is you are a French football expert. So it's time to make use of that expertise. Will PSG win the Champions League?
Yes, they will, because they showed less than a year ago that they were the best team in Europe by a relatively comfortable margin, and nothing has changed since. It's the same coach, it's the same players playing the same style of football. There's been one departure in Gianluigi Donnarumma. That has weakened them slightly, I think, but everyone else is still there, and they haven't been firing on all cylinders yet. The fact they're having to go through the playoff round shows that. They picked up 2 points from a possible 9 in their final 3 league phase fixtures, all of which on paper were winnable. But they are nevertheless capable of producing the football that they did last season. They've showed that in the Champions League. You go back to the start of the league phase, they were incredible against Atalanta in their opening fixture. 1-4-0. First half an hour or so is some of the best football I've seen all season. They win 2-1 away at Barcelona with a second string attack. They win 7-2 at Bayer Leverkusen. They've dropped points in games they shouldn't have dropped points in, but they did that all the time last season, and it didn't prevent them coming out on top. If you have a look at the stats from the league phase, they're actually outperforming last season's stats in terms of expected goals per game. So last season, they averaged 2.045 XG per league phase game. This season is 2.25. Okay, you'll say that it's not a completely fair comparison because they played a bunch of different teams. But last season, according to Opta, they had the hardest draw in the entire competition. This season, again, according to Opta, they had the second hardest draw in the competition, behind only Bayern Munich. So they've been playing teams of comparative strength, and they've been creating even more chances than they did last season, all of which augurs well. What augurs less well is that they are giving up more opportunities than they were last season. 0.87 expected goals against in 2024-25, and for this season that's 1.265. But you see that when you watch them. We saw that against Monaco last night. They were 2-0 down inside the first 20 minutes and they defended very badly. And that, I think, is the big issue that Luis Enrique needs to fix. And I think one of PSG's real calling cards last season was their ability to react very quickly to turnovers. When they lost possession, they would get back into shape extremely quickly and shut down opposition attacks. They're not doing that as well at the moment. And yet, again, they're defending better in Ligue 1. They averaged over a goal conceded per game last season, 1.03. This season, that's down to 0.86 per game. So it's only in the Champions League that we're seeing this problem. Luis Enrique will try and fix that. Given his pedigree as a coach, I think he will end up fixing that. And that is why PSG will win the Champions League again.
How much does their domestic form worry you, though? Because they're being run pretty close by Lens, who are a fairly ordinary team.
Lovely pronunciation.
Thank you very much. And then they lost on Friday to Rennes, 3-1. These are not results you would expect of PSG.
This is true, but compared to last season, they're not underperforming. It's Lens who are overperforming. PSG are more or less where they were last season at the same point in the season. What has changed everything is the fact that you've got this incredible Lens team who are, punching above their weight and currently top of Ligue 1. So I don't think in terms of performance level, PSG have dipped. I guess the one worry is that by this point last season, they had found the winning formula. They had that transformative 4-2 comeback win at home to Manchester City at the end of January last year in the pouring rain, when suddenly they started to look like a really dangerous team, and they kicked on from there. We saw another comeback victory from 2 goals down last night against Monaco. Not the same level of opposition, but could that represent a sort of springboard for them to, go and build further success on?
Well, it was just the second time that it was the 27th time in the Champions League they've trailed by 2+ goals. And last night was just the second time that they've managed to come back to win. So there are a lot of interesting parallels there. Iain mentions Lens. Last season, they began, as you say, at this time to sort of blow the rest of the French teams away domestically. Do you think having a tighter title race with Lens will help them in the sense that it means week on week they'll have to be really sharp?
It's a really interesting question, because one thing we've heard about PSG over and over again over the years is they come up short in the Champions League because they have no real competition domestically. And there is a degree of truth in that, but it's not entirely true. Lille won the league title in 2021. Monaco won it in 2017. There are teams who have managed to win Ligue 1 in this current PSG era. I think last season having a relatively comfortable title race meant that it was much easier for Luis Enrique to rotate, and it was something he did extremely skillfully. PSG had next to no injury problems last season. They were able to rest players quite a lot, Ousmane Dembele being a key example. There was a period in the second half of the season where he almost wasn't starting any Ligue 1 games at all, but every time there was a big Champions League fixture, he was there and he was scoring the crucial goals. This season, because the title race is so much tighter, it'll be much harder for him to rotate, and PSG are struggling with injuries in a way that they just didn't last season. And an awful lot of that, we know, is because of what happened last season. They went all the way to the final of the Club World Cup. They played their final. They played the final on July the 13th. They had 3 weeks off. then they were straight back in training. And after a week's training, UEFA Super Cup against Tottenham in Udine in Northern Italy. And then 4 days later, they started their Liga title defence. And there's been basically no let-up since then. The consequences of that have been injuries to literally almost every member of the first team squad. I think because some of those players have had time on the sidelines, they should be fresher now. So we should start to see PSG clicking into gear, but the fact that they're in a title race domestically means it's going to be harder for Luis Enrique to juggle things. So that could be something that ends up counting against them.
Are you feeling convinced?
I've got to say, more convinced now than I was before you started talking.
That's
because having kept a close eye on France this season and seen, I've been looking at it thinking, God, if Marseille had not been so chaotic, Marseille could absolutely be in the title race right now. And Lens are a very, very well-organised team, but they're not. There's no one there that would walk into Premier League teams. But you make a good argument, and it only takes 3 or 4 games for PSG to win them all and Lens to lose them, and suddenly they've got a 12-point gap, and they become one of those teams where you think, well, they've got nothing else to worry about. The other team, of course, being Bayern Munich.
Yes, well, we're going to come to them after the break. But before we go, we should just tell our listeners that PSG are an 8-1 chance to win the Champions League.
Interesting.
Iain, you've been telling me all season, genuinely all season, I think I can go back to August, and you've been telling me that you think Bayern Munich can do it. We've never really got into the reason why, because I usually just interrupt you and say, no, but Liverpool. Liverpool.
Yes.
So the floor is now yours. Tell us why Bayern Munich can win the Champions League.
Well, first of all, I love a bargain, as you know. I have Manchester City at 7-1 for the title because I threw money down when they were having a little wobble, and seeing Bayern Munich at 10-1 for this competition in the form that they were in that's absolutely extraordinary, particularly when you think they've basically already won the Bundesliga. They've even had their wobble now. They lost to Augsburg, then they dropped points against Hamburg, and that was it. That was their Berg period where things went a little bleak. They have scored 82 goals already. Like, most teams don't score anywhere near 82 goals in a season. It's February. They've got goals all over the place. They've got 26 off Harry Kane, 13 off Luis Diaz, 10 off Michael Olise. They are dripping in goals, and they will be able to rotate the heck out of that team all the way through your quarterfinals and your semi-finals on that lovely board there, because they won't have a single thing to worry about outside of Kane falling down a flight of stairs. There's so much experience in that team as well, from obviously Manuel Neuer is 39, but you've got Kimmich there as well on the base of the midfield at 31. Jonathan Tah's in his 30s. I don't really understand how that's happened. So they're set up. They've seen it all. They've done it all. They have nothing else to worry about. 10-1 looks like an absolute bargain.
They are 9-2 now.
Yeah,
so obviously they're convincing a few people. I want to zone in on Luis Diaz, a player I know well, of course. And he's had a brilliant season. There was a clip doing the rounds on the weekend of him juggling the ball on his knee while dribbling. And that's the Bundesliga. And, people say in lots of ways it's the most similar league to the Premier League, physicality-wise. But, the truth is there's a lot more space. And it, can flatter players like Luis Diaz, who is a very good player. But fundamentally, in the last 16, when Liverpool came up against PSG last season, he didn't have the guile, the pace, the skill to beat either of the PSG fullbacks in one-on-one situations. And I'm using him as a microcosm to say that if he wasn't good enough last season to help Liverpool progress in the last 16, and he's starring for this Bayern Munich side, does that just mean that Bayern Munich, as shown by their league phase defeat at Arsenal, are operating at a level below the English teams?
I think it's hard to judge him on how he fared against the two PSG fullbacks, given that they are possibly the two quickest fullbacks in the game, and Nuno Mendes shut down peak Mo Salah over both legs.
Well, there's a debate to have there, because Ramadan Salah is not always the same.
Of course, there's going to be an asterisk or a caveat. I think the Bayern Munich forward line is an absolute dream. There is so much talent. Michael Olise, Jamal Musiala and Harry Kane, in just terms of technical ability and just that kind of special sort of fantasy element that the great players have. They have it in spades. Luis Diaz brings so much that those three players do not possess. That sort of the energy, the work rate, the winning, that winning mentality that South American footballers so frequently have. Arsene Wenger used to talk about it all the time. What is it about South American forwards? They have this sort of hard edge to them that you don't find anywhere else. And Luis Diaz is the perfect example of that. And I think given the quality of the players around him, I don't think there's as much pressure on him necessarily to be a creator as perhaps there was when he was playing for Liverpool. I think, Elise is going to create chances. Musiala's going to create chances. That Kane's going to create chances. I really like the balance of that team. And I think they'd be great European champions. Like, I would not be dismayed to see Bayern Munich win the Champions League this season, because I think when you have that much quality, you just want to see them go on and,
And there's a fearlessness there as well that, we've had this conversation many times on this show. Despite having money on Man City, I think Arsenal will win the title, because over a 38-game season, you back a team like Arsenal who's just not going to lose many games. In a cup competition, you've got a team that is just, they know they can pull goals out of anywhere at any point. And if you're in the last 10 minutes and you need a goal, who do you back, Arsenal or Bayern?
Yeah, I think, the big question really is, have they improved since last season? And is Vincent Kompany a manager at the elite level required to win a Champions League? That's the question.
Well, you get me on my theory here that elite managers might not necessarily be very good managers lower down the list. Zidane being the case in point. I'm not sure how great a job he'd do if he suddenly took over at Burnley, but I know how great a job he'll do at Real Madrid. I think they're completely different jobs. I think Vincent Kompany did very, very well in the Championship, getting promoted with free-flowing football. Didn't really adapt enough to keep them in the Premier League. But I don't really think that has an awful lot to do with how good a Bayern Munich manager is. In much the same way that I don't think Michael Carrick's failure to get Middlesbrough promoted means that he's not going to be a very good Manchester United manager. They're very, very different jobs. I think Kompany appears to be a great elite level manager.
Can they win it?
Yeah, definitely.
Tom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so right now, if you had to choose between PSG and Bayern, who would you be choosing?
I'm still going to say PSG. I mean, I know, having reported on PSG for quite a long time and speaking to people around the club, around the changing room, the players are ultra motivated this season by the thought of successfully defending the Champions League. That is their ultimate priority. And I suspect if you were to give them a choice between winning Ligue 1 again and winning the Champions League again, they wouldn't have to give it a second's thought. That doesn't necessarily mean that, that's going to translate into victories, but given all the difficulties at the start of the season, the fact they had no real summer break, that they had no pre-season, they had all those injuries, what's kept them all going has been the knowledge that they would need to somehow find a way of hitting top four in the Champions League in February and March. Nothing that I've seen so far tells me that they are going to not be capable of doing that. So I'd still have PSG as my favourite.
Okay, we're going to go to a break, and then it's time to make our final predictions and bring back the whiteboard of doom. We are going to try to predict, as best we can, with the vast amount of intelligence that we have in the room, the winner of the 25-26 Champions League. Should we have a go?
Let's do it.
Okay, so as I was saying off air, I have put a green dot next to the team that I think is most likely to progress from the last 32 ties, some of which are already in progress and we already have a score for. So let's start with the silver path. Galatasaray, of course, comprehensively beat Juventus 5-2 last night. So I think it's reasonably likely to say that they're going to be the team to progress. Now, you may have noticed Liverpool FC occupying that box, and that is because Liverpool and Tottenham, who finished third and fourth in the group stage, Liverpool being the third place team, will play the lower ranked team that goes through. So that is likely to be out of Galatasaray, Juve, Bruges and Atletico Madrid. The lowest ranked team is likely to be Galatasaray. So I think we can put a big G in this box thinking it's going to be Galatasaray. And so I think, if you're looking at the Bruges and Atletico Madrid tie, Tom, that feels likely to be at Atletico.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Well, given their cup form as opposed to their league form.
And the January signings.
Ademola Lookman in particular, absolutely flying, and a man with European pedigree.
So we will put an A. I think the lowest ranked team among that group and the likeliest to go through in the Olympiacos Leverkusen side would be Leverkusen. We agreed?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Agreed.
L. And then Dortmund at Atlanta. Return leg still to be played in Bergamo. Dortmund with a 2-goal advantage.
Dortmund.
Right. Next phase. Galatasaray or Liverpool?
Well,
I mean, Galatasaray did win in the group stage, but having just said that's meaningless, I'll say Liverpool.
And Atletico Madrid or Tottenham?
Atletico Madrid.
I mean, I want to say Atletico Madrid. It probably will be Atletico Madrid, but I mean, Tottenham, they showed last season what can be done when you ally historically catastrophic domestic form with surprisingly good European form.
They're in a real relegation battle now. Yeah.
Atletico Madrid.
They knew it was impossible to get relegated last season.
Okay. Moving on to Arsenal against Leverkusen. We're assuming, I think
Arsenal.
Yeah.
I'm going to put an AR for clarity there. And then Dortmund against Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich. So that is the silver path quarterfinals sorted. Let's come back over to the blue path. Barcelona, Chelsea, Sporting Lisbon and Manchester City squeezing in. So in terms of
always a dig, isn't there, to a Liverpool rival? Always a dig.
In terms of who Barcelona can expect to face, they will get the lowest ranked team that comes through of Newcastle, Qarabag, PSG and Monaco. So I think in all likelihood, we're looking at the Newcastle Qarabag game to produce an opponent. Do we think Newcastle are going to go through against Qarabag?
Yeah, Newcastle are due some luck, aren't they?
So that would be a blockbuster tie to look forward to at St James's Park if Newcastle do get through.
Faustina Sprier's phone would be ringing again.
And then, so the PSG Monaco side, obviously fantastic comeback for PSG last night. I think going back to the Parc des Princes.
You would expect them to get through, yeah.
Okay, so we'll put a P in here. Coming over to this side, Sporting, having finished higher than Man City, get the lowest ranked team out of Benfica, Real Madrid, Inter Milan or Bodo Glimt. They have had to remove 5 feet of snow.
It's a lot of snow.
Around
It's a
Bodo
lot of
Glimt
snow.
Stadium and Arctic Circle conditions, but it is quite cold in Milan at this time of year, so maybe Inter Milan won't be too spooked by it. So I think probably likely that Inter Milan go through there to face Sporting Lisbon.
Yes.
And then on the basis that Real Madrid have come through a tough assignment in lots of ways in Lisbon, I think probably Real Madrid in that to face Man City. So that's our quarterfinal lineup. Let's have a go at predicting the round of 16. So starting off strong with Real Madrid, Man City.
I'm tempted to say Real Madrid.
I'm tempted to say City, but I realise
That's
this.
a casting vote.
Yeah,
I'd always go with Real Madrid because I'm a pedigree.
but they're not very good. They're not very good.
They're never any good. And they
Yeah,
win it.
they've
What they do.
created a culture of player power, and I mean it would be a disaster for football if they do well. But
Okay.
go on, I'll go with the
Unfortunately,
majority.
I think that disaster is more likely than not to happen, so we'll put them through. Inter Milan and Sporting Lisbon.
I haven't seen enough of Sporting, but I have seen a lot of Inter, and they're a very, very good side.
Yeah, I've seen Sporting a couple of times. They were very lucky to beat Marseille. They weren't particularly convincing against PSG, although they do counter-attack well. But yeah, I think I'd have to go with Inter.
Coming over to Newcastle against Barcelona.
Well, this is tough. Barcelona just got beaten by Girona, and they got walloped by Atletico in the cup. They can't defend at all.
They don't really have any defenders.
Yeah.
And Newcastle are just horrible. They will bully them physically and mentally. I could totally see Newcastle doing this and it being the sort of... Because you've got this horrible situation where Eddie Howe's done so well and he's won a trophy and he's had this horrible inconsistent season. I mean, it's got Benitez style 2005 written all over it. But I guess for the purposes of clarity, we should probably say Barca.
Newcastle can defend. They absolutely can be gritty when they have to be. I mean, they've not been at their best this season, but I think there's going to be a surprise somewhere. If there's going to be a surprise, I think it's probably likeliest to be here.
Go on, let's say Newcastle.
Yeah, sure. I can. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that Newcastle beat Barcelona.
Especially just coming back to the realm of logic. If Newcastle do come through against Qarabag, which is likely, think of the kind of energizing effect that will have on St James's Park to have had that experience of progressing in knockout football. So let's put Newcastle there. And then PSG against Chelsea. Tough.
Repeat of the Club World Cup final, which had a pretty stormy conclusion to it. I suspect that PSG, if they are still in the competition at this point, will be moving through the gears. And I would have thought they'd have too much for Chelsea.
Yeah, I can't quite get a handle on what Chelsea are right now. So, whereas I can with PSG, so I'll go with them.
That is your quarterfinals. Real Madrid against Inter Milan, Newcastle against PSG, Liverpool against
Atletico
Madrid, and Arsenal against Bayern Munich.
That's a good set of fixtures.
And then I think, I'm sorry to be a party pooper, but I think they redraw it at the quarterfinal stage. So it's actually impossible for us.
Well, they could just redraw it exactly as it is.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
So would you like to proceed?
Yeah, let's proceed. Come on, we've invested so much in this.
Okay. So on the blue path, Real Madrid against Inter Milan. There's only one winner for me in that.
Inter. They're a better team.
It should be Inter. If football made any sense, it would be Inter, but I'm saying Real Madrid.
Go on.
I can't have it. I can't have it because Arsenal and Liverpool both rocked up to the San Siro in the league phase and comprehensively were better than Inter Milan. So I just don't rate them particularly highly.
On your head, be it.
Right.
So let's go Real Madrid semi-finals. Newcastle, PSG.
PSG.
Okay, on the other side, Liverpool against Atletico Madrid. This draw makes me want to hide. Play white noise.
I don't trust Atletico Madrid. Over the course of the season, they've let themselves down so many times.
So up and down.
Yeah. Liverpool towards the back end of the season should be a little bit more together, a little bit more coherent. Loads of upheaval in the summer. They should be getting used to it. And look at Wirtz. First half of the season, Wirtz is flitting in and out of games. Now he's dominating them. I'll back Liverpool on that one.
Yeah, I think I'll go Liverpool as well.
The prospect of Ademola Lookman, I mean, he killed us for Atalanta a few seasons ago, so I have a lot of doubt, but, I'll go with the panel.
Ex-Everton as well.
I'll go with the panel. Right, Arsenal versus Bayern Munich.
Going Bayern Munich.
I'll go Bayern too.
Yeah.
Arsenal will be in the throes of pre-title excitement.
Yeah, and Bayern...
They'll go out and they won't even notice. It's too busy planning their parade.
Right, semi-finals, Real Madrid against PSG.
PSG all the way.
I go PSG.
And Liverpool against Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich all the way.
No. Sorry.
What, Lola? You have an issue?
If you backed Liverpool to get this far, then think about the kind of positive momentum behind Anfield that you would have by this stage. You can't just...
Another magical night at Anfield. But I don't think they'll make up for the 4-0 tonking they'll get in the Alliance Arena.
Okay, well, it's panel rules. Bayern Munich, so we would have a repeat of the 2020 Champions League final.
We would indeed, albeit this time in a non-echoey...
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Unless a global pandemic occurs between now and then, but hopefully not.
God forbid. I think I have a strong idea who would win that game.
Go on.
I'd be going for Bayern Munich purely because of what you were saying about the Club World Cup and the injuries. You can't just be in one perpetual season. The season must end at some point. So I think the legs just might not be there for PSG, and for Bayern Munich, the motivation there is just that bit more intense.
I just think it'd be funny to see the PSG the PSG chairman's face again, because every time PSG don't win the Champions League, he always goes and does a really angry face.
The scowl.
Yeah,
it is quite the scowl.
I'm going Bayern Munich. I think
therefore vote for PSG, knowing that I've already been outvoted.
The prediction model is already
decided.
But you know what this means? It means Harry Kane will win the Ballon d'Or.
Bayern.
You draw Harry Kane's face, please.
Munich.
With his 50th goal of the season.
But there you have it. That is the Champions League predicted. Bayern Munich are going to win the Champions League. And we've done this grounded in real logic.
Yeah, you don't have to watch now.
Basically like a computer. So Bayern Munich, 9-2 to win the Champions League. There you have it. That's our prediction. that has been your Odds Law. I've been your host, Lola Katz-Roberts, and thank you very much to Iain McIntosh and to our special guest, Tom Williams, who predicted the whole Champions League.
Well, collectively, I don't want to get heat.
We could have done it without you.
It was a pleasure.
See you next week.